The story of Atlantis is like a never-ending puzzle, a mystery that's been capturing our imagination for ages. It's this big, exciting question mark in history that just keeps us guessing and wondering. So let's dive into this fascinating tale, looking at it from all angles and see what all the buzz is about. Plato, this ancient Greek philosopher dude around 360 BC, starts talking about this super powerful island empire, Atlantis. He places it somewhere beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. According to him, this place was the real deal, a big-time naval power that ended up in ruins. Now, the twist is, Plato got this story secondhand from this Athenian big shot Solon, who heard it from Egyptian priests. These priests were talking about a civilization that rocked the world around 9600 BC. But here's the thing, Plato's the only guy who ever wrote about Atlantis, so people are always wondering, is this an actual historical thing, or did Plato just make up a really good story? A lot of people think Plato might have just cooked up Atlantis as this kind of warning story. Like, hey, don't get too greedy or too full of yourself or you'll end up like Atlantis. It's like a cautionary tale about what can happen when you let power and pride get the best of you. Is it an ancient lost city or just a tall tale? Join us as we dig into this mystery. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more fun stories. The Black Sea flood twist. Some theories are like, hey, maybe the Atlantis story is actually about this huge flood that happened in the Black Sea around 5600 BC. Imagine the Mediterranean Sea bursting through and flooding everything. It's like a real-life disaster movie that might have inspired the whole Atlantis flood story. The Minoan connection. Then there's this other theory linking Atlantis to the Minoan civilization. These guys were living it up on the Greek islands from about 2500 to 1600 BC, but then, bam, a volcano on Thera, now Santorini, blows its top around 1600 BC, and their civilization goes kaput. Maybe that's what got Plato thinking about a lost civilization. The wild world of modern Atlantis theories. Fast forward to now and you've got all sorts of theories about Atlantis. People have placed it everywhere from the Caribbean to Antarctica. But let's be real, a lot of these ideas are more Hollywood than history. They're fun to think about, but they don't have much solid evidence backing them up. Even if Atlantis was just a story, it's had a huge impact on our world. Back in the day, Renaissance writers like Francis Bacon and Thomas More used it as an inspiration for their own utopian stories. And in the 1800s, some people took it as historical fact, sparking all kinds of wild and wacky theories. Today, Atlantis is like this symbol for any advanced, mysterious civilization that's disappeared without a trace. It's a staple in movies, books, and all sorts of stories. So Atlantis remains this big, juicy mystery. It's often pictured as this super advanced, super rich place with all these hidden secrets. The burning question is, was Atlantis for real or just a figment of Plato's imagination? To try and crack this case, let's look closer at Plato's description in Secret Origins. Plato's the OG when it comes to Atlantis stories. He paints it as having this thriving island in the Atlantic Ocean way past what we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. His source? Solon, an Athenian thinker and lawmaker who heard about this great civilization during his travels in Egypt. Plato talks about Atlantis as if it was around 10,000 years BC, making it our earliest and most famous source of the myth. Plato was super into the Atlantis story. He even chatted with students of Pythagoras and other big brains who knew a lot about ancient myths, history, and geology. Some say he might have even gotten the lowdown from secret societies and mystery schools. These groups were like the keepers of ancient secrets, holding on to knowledge during times when things were rough. What's interesting is that Plato only started talking about Atlantis later in his life. It's like he wanted to make sure this story of a lost civilization got passed down. Now, Plato wasn't just making stuff up. He talked about ancient records that might have been kept in places like the Library of Alexandria. Some folks, like Edgar Cayce, even suggest that this library was set up by people from Atlantis way back in 10,300 BC. Plato's Atlantis wasn't just some small island, it was huge, but not quite continent-sized. He described it as a place rich in resources with cool metals like orichalcum and a land that was both technologically advanced and super prosperous. Here's the thing about Atlantis, it's like this magnet that keeps pulling us in. People have been trying to pin down its location for ages, from the depths of the ocean to hidden spots on land. There are TV shows, documentaries, and even explorers dedicated to hunting down this mythical place. Each theory adds another layer to the story, making it richer and more intriguing. Atlantis isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a cultural phenomenon. It's shown up in movies, books, video games, you name it. There's something about this lost civilization that just fires up our imagination. Whether it's the idea of hidden treasure, advanced technology, or just the mystery of a vanished empire, Atlantis has a little bit of everything for everyone. Some people think that Atlantis mirrors our own world. It's like a cautionary tale about what could happen if we're not careful. The story of a great civilization that got too big for its boots and then disappeared might be a warning for us today. It makes us think about how we handle power, technology, and our environment. The search for Atlantis is like this never-ending adventure. It's not just about finding a lost city, it's about the journey, the exploration, and the excitement of the unknown. Every new discovery, every new theory adds a piece to the puzzle, but the full picture is still out there, waiting to be found. What's super fascinating about Atlantis is how it connects the past, present, and future. It's a story that's been around for thousands of years but still feels relevant today. It makes us wonder about our origins, our destiny, and what lies beneath the surface of our own history. Imagine this ancient jaw-dropping city, the capital of Atlantis. Plato, this really old Greek philosopher, talks about it as this masterpiece of ancient engineering. It's right up there on the island's south coast with a huge canal connecting it to the sea. The city's design is like something out of a fantasy book, with 3 massive concentric rings, each separated by wide moats. The central area, the heart of it all, spans about 5 kilometers across, but the whole city is a whopping 23 kilometers wide. That's nearly double the size of Imperial Rome. Right in the center, there's this grand palace of the kings and the main temple of Atlantis, standing as proud symbols of just how rich and powerful the Atlanteans were. This island wasn't just self-sufficient, it was a hub of trade with the outside world, making its people super wealthy. For a long time, like during the Middle Ages, Atlantis was like a story that got shoved into the back of the closet. But then the Renaissance happened, and suddenly everyone's into ancient stories again. That's when the tale of Atlantis started making the rounds. Over the past few centuries, folks have come up with all sorts of ideas about Atlantis. Some think it's just a story with a moral, while others are dead set on proving it was a real place, like linking it to the Minoan civilization or the Black Sea flood. Now let's talk about the modern takes on Atlantis. They're all over the place. Some people think it's the real deal historical civilization, while others have these out there ideas. Like this guy Ishmael Perez in his book Cosmic Origin, who thinks beings from another dimension, the Pleiades, created Atlantis. It's like he's mixing spiritual stuff with the real world, saying Atlantis was this balance between the two. He even ties it to another mysterious place called Lemuria or Mu. These theories are super intriguing, but let's be honest, they're more in the realm of cool stories than hard facts. The story of Atlantis, real or not, has had an impact on our culture and literature. It's inspired countless Renaissance writers and still pops up in modern fiction and media. Atlantis is more than just a lost city story. It's about our longing for a perfect society and a warning about getting too big for our boots. In some really out there philosophy and theosophy, they say human evolution is like this series of stages called root races. Each stage is different with its own mission. The Atlantis race, or the fourth root race, is super important in this story. It's seen as the first real human race. The Russian mystic Helena Blavatsky, who was big into occult stuff, said these guys showed up around 8 million years ago and called them the race of the Red Man. The start of Atlantean civilization is shrouded in mystery. Some esoteric traditions believe that during the dawn of Atlantis, these high-level spiritual beings came down to Earth in human form. They were called the Fourth Root Race, and they weren't just ordinary folks. They were like divine beings in human bodies. Rudolf Steiner, another deep thinker, suggested their origins were out of this world. As Atlantis grew, it spread its influence way beyond its island home. History is full of cycles and natural disasters, and the sinking of Atlantis around 9600 BC is seen as one of these big, world-changing events. So what did Atlanteans look like? Theosophical texts describe them as giants, though not as huge as their predecessors, the Lemurians. They were tall enough to spark legends about Cyclops and Titans. Blavatsky thought these guys were the peak of human physical development. Edgar Cayce, the famous psychic, added his own twist to the Atlantis story. He talked about humanity popping up in 5 different areas around the same time, over 10.5 million years ago. This lines up with some stories in the Bible about sons of God mixing with daughters of men, creating a mixed race. Atlantean society was split over these hybrid beings. One group, the children of the Law of One, wanted to help them, while the sons of Belial were more into enjoying life and treating the hybrids as second-class citizens. According to Cayce, Atlantis faced 3 major disasters. One around 50,000 BC because of misusing technology, another around 28,000 BC due to conflicts, and the last one around 10,000 BC. After these disasters, the good guys, the children of the Law of Unity, spread out to places like Peru, Yucatan, and Egypt. So let's dive deeper into the later stages of the Atlantean civilization. It's like we're stepping into a scene from a sci-fi movie. Picture this: Egypt is on the rise, building mind-blowing stuff like the pyramids and the Sphinx. But hold on, there's a wild twist to the tale. Enter the Galactic Federation and some extraterrestrial drama. This part of the story comes from Matthias de Stefano, a guy who claims he remembers his past life in Atlantis. He says around 16,000 BC, these giant extraterrestrial beings called the Azir, also known as the Anunnaki, landed on Earth. They set up shop around places like the Azores, Canaries, and Cape Verde Islands. Their mission? To find a new home and mine for precious metals. And here's where it gets even crazier. They started messing with human DNA to create the perfect life form for Earth. Now, in this wild reimagining of Atlantis, it's not just about humans. It's a mix of us and these advanced aliens, the Azur. The Atlanteans, born from this intermingling, were all about truth and survival. The Azur had 2 goals: to keep living and to pass on their cosmic wisdom. But as always, there was drama. Some of these alien folks wanted to use humans as labor, while others wanted to help and teach them. A group of nice Azur, along with their buddies, the Arcturians, decided to protect some kids, letting them grow up without too much alien interference. Out of this group, 12 special kids were chosen. Each one represented knowledge from a different constellation, creating the foundation for 12 big Atlantean families. The early Atlantis was scattered across islands like Corfu, Cape Verde, the Azores, and the Canary Islands. There was also this key place called Eunuch. Hafiz, the main city, was what Plato described a big circular city. At its peak, Atlantis was hopping with about 300,000 people. These Atlanteans had something unique: blue blood, thanks to their Arcturian heritage. It was a sign of their pure roots and their role in guiding humanity. Unlike the introspective Lemurians, the Atlanteans were all about the material world. They were masters of sound and vibration, using this knowledge to control their environment and send info and energy all over. This tech was used for healing, regenerating bodies, and even making connections across dimensions. But here comes the downfall. The Atlanteans, who started off balancing their spiritual side with their tech skills, started fighting among themselves. Some wanted to rule the world, misusing their advanced gadgets. This led to a huge disaster, maybe a pole shift or a fight with their own energy weapons. That's what brought Atlantis crashing down. In our collective memory, Atlantis is this legendary place full of secret knowledge and esoteric wisdom. They were pros at using life energy or prana and started off respecting Lemurian values like spiritual community and balance. Edgar Cayce, this famous psychic, saw early Atlanteans as super intuitive, tuned in to the future and the past. They focused on developing their right brain from childhood, valuing dreams and insights. Atlantean kids were trained to be psychic, a practice that continued into adulthood. This made them incredibly disciplined and insightful. Living in sync with nature, the Atlanteans kept their psychic powers sharp. Rudolf Steiner, another big thinker, believed they were the first to use life force for tech stuff. This control over prana gave them almost magical power over matter, time, and gravity, and it fueled their tech without hurting the environment. Cayce's readings suggest that the Atlanteans had this massive crystal for energy and were masters of sound and atomic power. They had crazy transportation and long-distance communication, stuff that makes us wonder about our own tech future. Could we rediscover these lost Atlantean skills? It's a thought that both excites and baffles us. What do you think? Real deal or just a cool story? Hit the like button and subscribe to keep up with more awesome mysteries like this one.